Dr. Eli Harper adjusted his lab coat for the third time that morning, nervously checking the placement of every instrument in his quantum engineering laboratory. The New Geneva Research Station's most advanced wing housed his life's work, a pristine sanctuary where every tool occupied its designated position, every datapad arranged with mathematical precision. Today marked the arrival of his requested assistant, someone he'd specifically described as quiet, methodical, and experienced. With delicate instrumentation, the Galactic Alliance work program had assured him they'd found the perfect match. The laboratory doors hissed open, and Eli looked up from his holographic displays with an expectant smile that immediately froze on his face. The figure filling, his doorway defied every expectation he'd harbored. 8 feet tall with shoulders broad enough to span the entire entrance, the newcomer possessed an imposing physique clearly designed for warfare rather than research. Burnished bronze skin stretched over a frame built for combat, and piercing amber eyes surveyed his laboratory like a battlefield requiring tactical assessment. Standard Alliance civilian attire somehow resembled military armor on her massive form. "Dr. Harper," the figure announced in a voice like distant thunder, "I am Commander Vetra of the Cytherian War Caste. I have been assigned to your research division for civilian reintegration service." Eli's mind raced through his application. Submitted months earlier, he'd been extraordinarily specific. Theoretical engineering background, experience with quantum field manipulation, preferably someone who appreciated quiet work environments and precise methodologies. "There's been some mistake," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I requested a research assistant, not a—" He gestured helplessly at her imposing presence. Vetra's expression remained granite solid as she produced a datapad from her belt. "Assignment Order 9947A, Dr. Eli Harper, Quantum Engineering Division, New Geneva Research Station. Duration: 6 months mandatory service for cultural reintegration." The phrase mandatory service struck Eli like a physical blow. He'd heard whispers about alien rehabilitation programs, warriors deemed unsuitable for their combat-oriented societies, forced into civilian roles to prove their adaptability, but surely there had been an administrative error. "Commander Vetra, I believe there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Vetra interrupted, stepping fully into his sanctuary. Her boots, clearly designed for battle rather than laboratory, work struck the polished floor with each measured step. "I am here to assist with your research operations while completing my rehabilitation requirements." Eli watched in mounting horror as Vetra approached his most delicate instrument, a quantum field manipulator worth more than most planetary defense budgets. Her massive hands, scarred from what were obviously countless battles, reached toward the device with the same casual confidence she might approach a weapon. "Don't touch that." The words exploded from him with uncharacteristic force. Vetra froze, her amber eyes fixing on him with predatory intensity. For a terrifying moment, Eli felt like prey caught in the gaze of an apex predator. Then, slowly, she withdrew her hands. "The device appears fragile," she observed matter-of-factly. "Poor tactical design. In combat situations, equipment durability is essential for mission success." "This isn't combat," Eli protested, his voice rising despite his efforts to remain calm. "This is precision scientific research. Everything here requires delicate handling, careful calibration, and absolute concentration." Vetra nodded once as if filing away intelligence about operational parameters. "Understood. However, my assignment remains unchanged. I will adapt to your requirements." Eli stared at this warrior who spoke of his life's work like a military campaign, realizing the next 6 months would either destroy his research or teach him patience he never knew he possessed. The first week proved to be an unmitigated disaster. Eli watched in growing frustration as Commander Vetra treated every aspect of his laboratory like a military operation requiring strategic analysis and tactical implementation. "The quantum resonance chamber requires delicate frequency adjustments," Eli explained for the 4th time that morning, his patience wearing thin. "You can't just—" "Insufficient," Vetra interrupted, her massive frame looming over the control panel. "This approach lacks efficiency. In combat engineering, We would establish primary and secondary calibration protocols simultaneously, reducing operational time by 37%. Eli rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building behind his eyes. This isn't combat engineering. It's theoretical quantum mechanics. One miscalibration could destroy months of research data. Vetra's amber eyes narrowed as she studied the holographic displays. Your methods are overcautious. Fear of failure prevents optimal performance. Caution prevents catastrophic equipment failure. Eli shot back, his voice rising higher than he'd intended. Some of us can't solve problems by hitting them with bigger weapons. For a moment, something dangerous flickered across Vetra's features. A flash of the warrior beneath the forced civilian facade. Then it vanished, replaced by professional stoicism. Noted, she said simply, stepping back from the controls. Their fundamental incompatibility became more apparent with each passing day. Where Eli preferred methodical, step-by-step processes, Vetra attacked problems with aggressive directness. Where he sought quiet contemplation, she demanded immediate action. Her presence transformed his peaceful sanctuary into a battlefield of competing philosophies. The breaking point came during a critical experiment involving quantum entanglement patterns. Eli had spent weeks preparing the delicate procedure, checking and rechecking every variable. The success of his entire research project hinged on this single test. Initiating quantum field alignment, Eli announced, his fingers dancing across the control interface with practiced precision. The chamber hummed to life, energy readings climbing steadily toward optimal levels. Vetra observed from her designated station, her massive form surprisingly still as she monitored the secondary displays. For once, she seemed content to follow his lead rather than suggest tactical alternatives. The experiment proceeded flawlessly for the first 30 minutes. Quantum particles danced in perfect synchronization, their entangled states maintaining stability beyond Eli's most optimistic projections. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Perhaps this forced partnership wouldn't destroy his career after all. Then the cascade failure began. Warning lights flashed across every console as the quantum field destabilized. Energy readings spiked beyond safe parameters, threatening to overload the entire system. Eli's hands flew across the controls, desperately attempting to restore equilibrium, but the feedback loop had already established itself. Containment breach imminent, the laboratory's automated systems announced in their maddeningly calm voice. Evacuate immediately. Eli continued working frantically, sweat beading on his forehead as he tried every emergency protocol he knew. Nothing worked. His life's research was about to be destroyed in a catastrophic implosion that would take half the laboratory with it. Move aside, Vetra commanded, her voice cutting through his panic like a blade. No, I can fix this. I just need... Your emotional response is compromising your effectiveness, Vetra stated, physically displacing him from the controls with surprising gentleness. Tactical assessment. The primary stabilization matrix is fighting the secondary. Harmonics. Elementary battlefield principle. You're treating the symptom, not the cause. Eli watched in amazement as Vetra's scarred hands moved across the interface with unexpected precision. Instead of attempting to restore the quantum field directly, she began systematically isolating individual components, creating fire breaks in the energy cascade. Impossible, Eli breathed, watching the reading stabilize. How did you... Your equipment follows the same principles as our plasma containment systems, Vetra explained without looking up from her work. Different application, identical underlying physics. In combat, we learn to see the battlefield entire, not just individual skirmishes. Within minutes, she had the system completely under control. The quantum field settled into stable parameters, the experiment salvaged from certain destruction. Eli stared at the displays in disbelief, then at the warrior who had just saved his career. That was... extraordinary, he admitted quietly. Vetra straightened to her full height, her expression unreadable. Your theoretical knowledge is extensive, but you lack tactical thinking. You see trees, not forests. For the first time since her arrival, Eli found himself genuinely curious about his assigned partner rather than simply frustrated by her presence. Perhaps there was more to Commander Vetra than military posturing and aggressive problem-solving. "Could you teach me?" he asked hesitantly. "This tactical approach?" Something that might have been surprise flickered across her features. "You would accept instruction from a failed warrior?" "You just saved my research," Eli replied. "That doesn't seem like failure to me." Vetra studied him for a long moment, her amber eyes searching his face for signs of deception or mockery. Finding none, she nodded once. "Very well, Dr. Harper, perhaps we can learn from each other." The power failure struck during the worst storm New Geneva had experienced in decades. Lightning illuminated the laboratory in stark, intermittent flashes, while thunder rattled the reinforced windows. Emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie red glow, and the backup generators hummed ominously in the distance. "Estimated repair time, 6 to 8 hours, Vetra announced, consulting her communicator. "We are effectively trapped until the storm passes." Eli sank into his desk chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. The past month of working alongside Vetra had been mentally and physically draining. While their professional relationship had improved since the quantum field incident, they still maintained careful distance from each other, two incompatible species forced into an uncomfortable alliance. "Great," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. "Just perfect." Vetra settled onto the floor near the laboratory's central workstation, her massive frame somehow managing to look graceful, despite the confined space. In the dim emergency lighting, her bronze skin seemed to glow with an inner warmth that Eli found unexpectedly pleasant. "You are troubled," she observed, her voice softer than usual. "Not merely by the power failure." Eli glanced at her, surprised by the perceptiveness of her comment. "It's nothing. Just this whole situation. The forced partnership, the cultural differences, the constant feeling that I'm failing at everything." "You are not failing," Vetra said with quiet conviction. "Your research methods are sound. Your theoretical knowledge exceeds that of most scholars in the Alliance. Then why do I feel so inadequate?" The words slipped out before Eli could stop them. "Every day I watch you solve problems I've been struggling with for months. You make everything look so simple." Vetra was quiet for a long moment, her amber eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight Eli had never heard before. "On my homeworld, I was considered a failure long before I came here." Eli looked up, startled by this unexpected revelation. "What do you mean?" "Catherian society values strength, above all else. Combat prowess, tactical superiority, the ability to dominate through force." Vetra's hands clenched into fists as she spoke. "I possessed all these qualities. I was among the finest warriors my generation produced. Then what happened? I showed mercy." The words came out like a confession. "During a border conflict with the Zelani Confederacy, I captured an enemy commander. Standard protocol demanded immediate execution. Instead, I chose to spare him." Eli found himself leaning forward, drawn into her story despite himself. "Why?" "He had a photograph of his family, a mate, 3 younglings. In that moment, I saw not an enemy but someone like myself, fighting for something he loved." Vetra's voice grew distant. "My superiors viewed this as weakness, contamination by alien sentimentality. I was stripped of rank, exiled to civilian reintegration to cure me of these defects." "That's not weakness," Eli said quietly. "That's humanity, or whatever the equivalent is for your species." Vetra's amber eyes met his across the darkened laboratory. "Your people have a word for it. Compassion. It is considered a virtue among humans, is it not?" "The highest virtue," Eli confirmed. "But you're telling me your society punished you for showing mercy? Catherian culture has no place for warriors who hesitate to kill." Vetra's voice carried a bitterness that made Eli's chest tighten. "I am here because I am broken, Dr. Harper. Defective, a failed soldier learning to be something else." "You're not broken," Eli said with surprising vehemence. "You're evolved. Your society's loss is our gain." Vetra stared at him, something unreadable flickering across her features. You speak with great certainty for someone who claims to feel inadequate. Eli laughed, a short, bitter sound. That's different. I'm inadequate because I'm socially awkward, professionally isolated, and apparently incapable of forming meaningful relationships with anyone. You're here because you're too good for your own society. Professional isolation, Vetra repeated thoughtfully. You have no colleagues, no research partners? I had colleagues once, graduate school, early career positions, but I'm difficult to work with, too focused, too intense, too willing to prioritize research over relationships. Eli shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. Eventually, everyone gives up on me. That's why I requested an assistant instead of a partner. I figured someone assigned to help me would have to stick around. And yet you have been patient with me, Vetra observed, despite my aggressive methods. Because you're brilliant, Eli said simply. Frustrating, intimidating, and completely alien but brilliant. Working with you has taught me more about my own research than 5 years of solo work. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the storm raging outside while emergency power hummed around them. Eli found himself studying Vetra's profile in the dim lighting, noticing details he'd overlooked before. The elegant curve of her neck, the way her breathing remained steady and controlled even in this confined space, the subtle patterns of scarring on her hands that spoke of countless battles. Dr. Harper, Vetra said eventually, her voice unusually hesitant. Eli, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you regret the assignment error? Would you prefer a different assistant? Eli considered the question carefully, surprised by his own answer. A month ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now, I'm not sure. You challenge me in ways I never expected. You've made me better at my work, forced me to think differently about everything. Even though I am difficult, intimidating, especially because you're difficult, Eli admitted. I've spent my entire career avoiding challenges, hiding in my laboratory, keeping the world at a safe distance. You make that impossible. Vetra nodded slowly, as if his words confirmed something she'd already suspected. On Cytheria, we have a saying, the blade that has never known resistance cannot hold an edge. Perhaps we are each other's resistance. Perhaps we are, Eli agreed, feeling something shift between them in the darkness, a recognition, an understanding that hadn't existed before. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the laboratory, two outcasts from different worlds had found something neither had expected: acceptance. The morning after the storm brought more than just restored power to the laboratory. Something fundamental had shifted between Eli and Vetra during their night of shared confessions, creating an undercurrent of awareness that neither could ignore. Eli found himself stealing glances at his alien partner as she worked, noticing the graceful efficiency of her movements, the way her bronze skin caught the laboratory lighting, the quiet intensity with which she approached every task. When their hands accidentally brushed while calibrating equipment, he felt an electric jolt that had nothing to do with static discharge. Your heart rate has increased, Vetra observed without looking up from her calculations. Are you experiencing physical distress? Heat flooded Eli's cheeks. No, I'm fine. Just focused on the work. Vetra's amber eyes met his, and he saw something there that made his breath catch. An awareness that mirrored his own, carefully controlled but unmistakably present. Focused, she repeated, her voice carrying the slightest emphasis that suggested she understood exactly what was happening between them. Their professional partnership had evolved into something more dangerous, a connection that violated every protocol regarding interspecies relationships. Alliance regulations were clear. Romantic involvement between species was strongly discouraged, particularly during mandatory service assignments. The potential for exploitation, cultural misunderstanding, and diplomatic complications made such relationships a bureaucratic nightmare. But understanding the rules didn't make the attraction any less real. The first physical contact came 3 weeks later, during a late-night session in the laboratory. Eli had been pushing himself too hard, surviving on stimulants and determination while pursuing a breakthrough in quantum field manipulation. The exhaustion finally caught up with him as he swayed dangerously near a bank of sensitive equipment. Vetra's strong arms caught him before he could fall, pulling him against her chest with surprising gentleness. For a moment they stood frozen in that position. Eli's smaller frame cradled against Vetra's powerful form, her unique scent filling his senses, the steady rhythm of her breathing against his hair. "You need rest," she said quietly, but made no move to release him. "I need to finish this calculation," Eli protested weakly, even as he found himself relaxing into her embrace. "The calculation will wait. You will not be effective if you collapse from exhaustion." Vetra's voice carried a note of concern that sent warmth spreading through Eli's chest. "When did you last sleep?" "Yesterday. Maybe the day before." Eli's words were muffled against her uniform. "Time doesn't matter when you're close to a breakthrough." "Time always matters," Vetra replied, her arms tightening slightly around him. "On the battlefield, exhausted soldiers make fatal mistakes. The same principle applies to research." Something in her tone made Eli look up, meeting her amber eyes, from mere inches away. The intensity he saw there made his heart race, and he was suddenly, acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched. Her hands on his back, his chest pressed against hers, the warmth radiating from her skin. "Eli," she said softly, his name sounding different in her deep voice. "This is dangerous territory." "I know," he whispered, but neither of them moved apart. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable, a collision of need and longing that swept away months of careful professional distance. Vetra's lips were softer than he'd expected, her touch reverent despite her strength. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "We cannot," Vetra said, but her hands remained on his face, thumbs tracing the lines of his cheekbones. "I know," Eli repeated, leaning into her touch. "But I can't stop thinking about you. About this." "Nor can I," she admitted, her voice rough with emotion. "But the regulations—" "Damn the regulations," Eli said with uncharacteristic vehemence. "I've spent my entire life following rules, staying safe, never taking risks. For once, I want to feel something real." Vetra's amber eyes searched his face, looking for certainty, for understanding of what they were risking. "If this is discovered, your career, my career means nothing without you," Eli said, surprising himself with the truth of it. "These past months working with you, learning from you, it's changed everything. You've changed everything." The second kiss was deeper, more desperate, as if they were both trying to memorize the moment before reason could intervene. Vetra's hands tangled in Eli's hair, while his traced the powerful lines of her shoulders, marveling at the contradiction of strength and gentleness in her touch. "Your quarters or mine?" Vetra asked against his lips, her voice husky with desire. "Mine," Eli breathed. "It's closer." They moved through the corridors like conspirators, hyper-aware of every security camera, every potential witness to their forbidden liaison. Eli's hands shook as he keyed in his access code, Vetra's presence behind him a warm, solid promise of what was to come. Once inside his quarters, the last barriers fell away. Clothing was shed with urgent efficiency, revealing the beautiful contrast of their bodies. Eli's pale, lean frame against Vetra's bronze, powerful form. Every touch was a revelation, every kiss a rebellion against the forces that would keep them apart. Later, as they lay entwined in Eli's narrow bed, her arm wrapped protectively around his shoulders, Eli traced patterns on her chest with his fingertip. "No regrets?" Vetra asked softly, her voice vibrating through her chest against his ear. "None," Eli said firmly. "Whatever happens, I won't regret this. Us." Vetra's arm tightened around him, pulling him closer. "Then we face whatever comes together." Outside, the space station continued its silent orbit, unaware that two hearts from different worlds had found a connection that would change everything, both for them and for the future of interspecies relations. The conspiracy unraveled on a Tuesday morning when Eli discovered the unauthorized access logs in his research database. Someone had been systematically copying his quantum field manipulation data for weeks, stealing months of breakthrough research that could revolutionize interspecies technology. They're not just stealing the research, Eli explained to Vetra as they reviewed the security footage in his locked laboratory. They're preparing to suppress it entirely. My work proves that human and alien technologies can be integrated at the quantum level. It's the foundation for true technological cooperation between species. Vetra's amber eyes hardened as she studied the evidence. And certain factions prefer to maintain technological segregation. Exactly. If species can't share technology, they remain dependent on the alliance bureaucracy for everything. It's about control, not cooperation. The scope of the conspiracy became clear as they dug deeper. Dr. Harrison Webb, the station's deputy director, had been coordinating with a cabal of alliance officials to suppress research that threatened the established order. Interspecies relationships, collaborative research, technological integration, all seen as threats to a system that profited from division. They know about us, Vetra said quietly, reviewing a classified communication that mentioned inappropriate relationships compromising research integrity. Eli felt his blood run cold. They're going to use our relationship to discredit the research, claim it's biased, compromised by personal involvement. Then we must act before they can move against us, Vetra declared, her military training asserting itself. Strike first, strike hard. Their plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of hiding their relationship, they would make it the centerpiece of their defense. If the conspiracy wanted to use their love as a weapon, they would turn that weapon against their accusers. The Alliance Science Council's emergency session was packed with officials, researchers, and media representatives. Eli stood before the assembly, Vetra at his side, as they presented not just his research findings but the story of their partnership. My quantum field manipulation breakthrough wasn't achieved despite my relationship with Commander Vetra, Eli declared, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. It was achieved because of it. Her tactical thinking, her different perspective, her unique insights, they were essential to the discovery. Vetra stepped forward, her commanding presence filling the space. Dr. Harper's research proves that cooperation between species isn't just possible. It's necessary for true advancement. Those who seek to suppress this research do so because they profit from division. The evidence they presented was overwhelming. Financial records showing payments to researchers who suppressed interspecies collaboration. Communication logs revealing the conspiracy's extent. Most damning of all, the stolen research data that proved the systematic theft of breakthrough discoveries. Dr. Webb and his co-conspirators tried to deflect, claiming the research was compromised by inappropriate personal relationships and alien influence on human scientific integrity. Inappropriate? Eli's voice rang with righteous anger. What's inappropriate is suppressing research that could benefit all species because it threatens your political control. What's inappropriate is using fear and prejudice to maintain power, structures that serve no one but yourselves. The vote was closer than Eli had hoped, but decisive nonetheless. The conspiracy was exposed, the research validated, and the perpetrators faced sanctions that would end their careers in disgrace. More importantly, the Council passed new regulations actively encouraging interspecies collaboration and explicitly protecting researchers from discrimination based on personal relationships. We did it, Eli said as they walked through the station corridors after the hearing, their hands clasped together openly for the first time. We did, Vetra agreed, her voice carrying satisfaction in something deeper, pride not just in their victory, but in what they had built together. 6 months later, Eli stood in their new joint laboratory, watching Vetra calibrate equipment with the same precision she'd once applied to weapons. The Interspecies Research Initiative had grown beyond their wildest dreams, with collaborative teams working on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. Any regrets? Vetra asked, echoing the question from their first night together. Eli looked around their shared workspace, then at the woman who had transformed his life in ways he never could have imagined. only that it took a bureaucratic error to bring us together. Perhaps not an error, Vetra suggested, her amber eyes twinkling with amusement. Perhaps the universe simply has better tactical instincts than Alliance administrators. Commander Vetra, Eli said, pulling her into his arms. I think that's the most romantic thing you've ever said. I am still learning the finer points of human courtship, she replied, leaning down to kiss him. But I believe I am making progress. Outside their laboratory, the space station hummed with the activity of a dozen different species working together, their love story having become a symbol of what was possible when barriers were broken down rather than built up. The quantum field manipulator they had built together stood ready for its next experiment, a testament to the power of cooperation, understanding, and love that transcended the boundaries of species, culture, and expectation.